it's Reagan, and today I'm filming a very special video in honor of the new release of Passenger by Alexandra Bracken. This novel came out on January 5th. It is currently the 9th, so guess what? It exists in the world already. In honor of this newest released novel, I am working with Disney Hyperion for this video to do a couple of things. First, I'm going to tell you and talk about the book, but then I'm also going to do a challenge of sorts and talk about a lot of different books that take place from all over the world in honor and inspired by this book, because this book takes place all around the world. So let's go ahead and get started. So Passenger is a time travel novel, but it has a lot of historical elements due to the time travel aspect of the book. It follows two main characters. Our first main character is born in present time, is a violinist prodigy, and that's what she wants to do for the rest of her life. Until one day her life is basically turned on its head and she realizes that her family life and family past is a lot more complicated than she initially thought, and she's kind of sent on a journey when she realizes that she comes from a long line of time travelers. And there she runs into our other main character who lives in 18th century colonial America, but he's just not any old like carpenter. He is a pirate. Yeah, a pirate. But my favorite part of this book has to be the time travel elements, but also historical elements. So obviously this book deals with time travel, but because this book deals with time travel, obviously these individuals are going to different places all around the world at different time periods. So it's like a historical fiction novel with a twist, and it's like you don't just get the histories of Europe or America in certain gaps of time. You literally are going everywhere and anywhere at every part of time, which is just something I really enjoyed. It had a lot of diversity within the characters and also the worlds in which they visited. It was super interesting. It ended on a huge cliffhanger, and I'm really excited for the continuation of the series. It's just a lot of fun, and I love the concept so much. Like I said, in honor of Passenger, I am now going to be talking about all the books that I could think of that take part in places all around the world. All around the world, which actually was a little more difficult than I initially thought. As well, I have read a lot of books that have taken place in a lot of places. I've read a lot more fantasy novels, and those are made up worlds, and while they might be heavily influenced by our world or by our history, they don't really exist. So I had to do some digging on these guys. The first novel I'm going to mention is Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. This is an amazing historical fiction novel taking place in Iceland. This is the only novel I've ever read taking place in that location, and it was absolutely haunting, and the atmosphere of this book was fantastic. Definitely the setting of this novel for me was like the most powerful part about it. So yeah, if you're looking for an Icelandic novel, there you go. Burial Rites. Next up, we have The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson, a very famous novel, and of course this takes place in Sweden. It is a very famous Swedish crime detective novel, and it is actually written by a Swedish man, and it's translated work as well, which I think is really exciting. And yeah, so this takes place in Sweden. It's very cold, it's very modern, and it's very interesting. Next up on the list, we have The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton. This is another historical fiction novel taking place this time in Amsterdam, which is definitely really cool, specifically with the historical setting of this novel. During this time in Amsterdam's history, there are huge commercial merchants, and they're very powerful in this sense, and this is when this book takes place, and it's very interesting. All the early 16th century politics and social cues are very important in this novel, and I think it adds the setting very well. But honestly, the city setting of Amsterdam itself is definitely one of my favorite aspects of this novel. It is just very cool. Next up, we are moving to another continent, and that is going to be The Walled City by Ryan Groudon. This novel is technically an inspired novel, but it really is based off of a real place in China, and this is called The Walled City. The Walled City was once a city that is now destroyed within China. That was a literal city that was walled in by skyscrapers, and in that area there was basically a no law zone. Like, anyone could do whatever they wanted, and this novel is inspired by that, and it follows multi-perspectives of characters trying to survive in this lawless place. It's very good, and the cultural aspects of this novel shine through this very well. The Chinese cultural aspects, that is, and it's just fascinating. Now we're kind of straddling a couple of continents. Ooh, jokes, because we got The Bronze Horseman, which is set in Russia, which, if you didn't know, Russia spans, you know, Europe and also Asia. But The Bronze Horseman is a World War II historical fiction novel following our main characters as they live in St. Petersburg, but at the time of this novel that is Leningrad? That'd be really embarrassing if I got that wrong. But yeah, this novel is amazing. Obviously the setting is very important to this story. The Russian political history of this time period is like the center focus of the conflict before these two characters. It's fascinating and I really, really love this book. It's great. Obviously I'm a huge fan of Russia. I had to like pick and choose which book that I picked for Russia for this video because I couldn't just have a video where all the books were set in Russia. I could, maybe I will one day, but for now we just have the one. Next up, we're taking a little trip over to America, but I wanted to be a little creative for America because there's so many books set in America. So I went with the least populated, question mark, I'm pretty sure. That might not be true, there's always Wyoming. Someone let me know. But what I think might be the least populated state in all of the 50 states, Alaska. This novel, Revolver, is set during the gold rush in Alaska, during the gold rush time, early 20th century, I want to say. And it follows a boy who lives in the Arctic wilderness with his father until one day his father steps out to go run some errands and a very scary man comes in with a loaded gun and some stolen gold, and it's kind of a standoff between these two characters set in this Alaskan frozen wilderness. It is intense, let me tell you. And the wilderness is definitely a huge part of this novel. The Alaskan landscape, the fact that they're so isolated and alone and the outside is so dangerous, that's what makes this novel so suspenseful, and it's great. Next up, we have a novel that's set in India, but also Nepal. It's mostly set in India, but our main character is from Nepal, which I think is really interesting. I haven't seen very many books in the YA field from these two places. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, I would love to know more books, but this is a novel about a young girl sold into sex slavery. Definitely not a cheery topic, but a very important one, very sad, very, very hard to read, but again, extremely important and realistic as this story is happening every day to young girls all around the world, so we should be talking about it. But yeah, this novel is set again in India and Nepal, which is definitely cool. And the last book probably doesn't count because it's technically out of this world, but it definitely takes place on an interesting setting, and that's The Martian by Andy Weir. This book takes place on Mars. Yeah, so I thought Mars was a pretty unique setting. Not very many people live there, so I just thought this would be a great thing to include there. But yeah. Alrighty guys, that is my mini review of Passenger and also my Passenger All Around the World challenge. Let me know down below some books you've read that have taken place in interesting places around the world, as I would love to know. And anyway, I will see you guys soon with another video soon. Goodbye!